I take film criticism very seriously. So obviously when the reviews on Home Alone came out, for instance, that was heartbreaking. What I've learned, and what I think is essential for filmmakers, is that that doesn't matter. What matters is longevity. When Home Alone is suddenly put into the National Registry of Films, I'm like, well, the critics were wrong. Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone. Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets. So Harry Potter was introduced to me by my daughter Eleanor, who is now my partner in Maiden Voyage, and I knew she had tremendous instinct when she kept convincing me to read the book, and I refused. I said, I'm not interested in this kind of book. I want to read Grapes of Wrath. I was full of myself, and finally I read the book, and I realized, oh my God, there's a great film here. So I called my agent, and I said, I think this is a movie I would love to direct. She said, yeah, you and 30 other people. I said, well, is there any way I can get a meeting? She said, yeah, I can get you a meeting with Warner Brothers. And I said to her, make sure I get the last meeting. I want to be the last director in the room. She didn't understand why, but I got the script and I spent 8 days rewriting the script. Now, I didn't have to rewrite Steve Kloves' script. What I did is I wrote a director's version where I added camera angles and how I was going to shoot the script. And I walked into the meeting and I said, I've rewritten the script for you for free. No one else in Hollywood would do this, so you can see what I'm going to do with the movie. So I started the meeting like that. It was a brash thing to do, but in the long run, it worked out. I got the job.
I'm not Harry. I am.
Well, of course you are.
Casting process was difficult because we had the eyes of the world on us. The books were extremely popular, and everyone wanted to know who's playing Harry Potter. We looked at hundreds of tapes, and Daniel was the person that I saw David Copperfield. He had a small role in David Copperfield, and even seeing that, I remember calling David Heyman and I said, this kid, Daniel Radcliffe, I want to see him. And David said his family is not interested in him being in the movie. So there was that process. But eventually, Daniel agreed to screen test.
That's a dragon egg. That's what that is.
A lot of people were not interested in Daniel. And I thought Daniel had this haunted quality about him that none of the other kids had. Harry Potter had a haunted quality. Both of his parents had been killed. So he was walking around carrying this tragedy, and I felt that Daniel had that.
Thanks, Hagrid.
The first time Daniel had a major scene in the film happened to be the scene where he is leaving Hogwarts and going home. So we shot the end of the film first. I remember placing the camera in position, and Daniel says, I'm not going home, not really. And we were all very moved at that point. We couldn't explain why, but there was something in his performance.
I'm not going home. Not really.
Again, it captured that haunted quality. He delivered that line as if he had lived, 60 years or something. And it was improbable that an 11-year-old could have that kind of complexity in a performance. And we didn't know it at the time. We just knew that we were moved by what he did. And at that point, I knew we cast the perfect kid for Harry Potter. Alan had the opportunity to sit, maybe have dinner with J.K. Rowling, so he knew exactly where his character was going from day one. He was not allowed to tell any of us what he knew. So it was frustrating for me as a director because there were some choices that he would be making as an actor, and I didn't understand why he was going there. Choices where he would let his guard down a little as Snape, and I didn't understand why. I would say, Alan, why did you do that on that last take? And he goes, I can't tell you. It's very frustrating. So he was just like, just trust me. And as we were cutting the film together, even though we didn't know where Snape's character was going, those choices appeared to be right because they made his character in that first film more complex and more interesting. Home Alone.
A dead kid.
I directed a film after Adventures in Babysitting that was a box office and critical disaster. Literally, they stopped playing it in theaters 3 days after the movie came out. So I was driving cross country with my wife, heading back to her family's house in Chicago, and basically the conversation was, well, I can always be a writer. I had a great success as a writer, so I'll go back and become a screenwriter. I gave my best shot to directing. It didn't work out. So I got back to Chicago, staying at my wife's parents' house, and I got a call from John Hughes. We had the same agent, sent me a script called Christmas Vacation, asked me if I wanted to direct it. I thought it was a very funny script. Somebody was giving me an opportunity to direct. It was right in my wheelhouse, kind of had the edgy humor that I loved. And then I met with the star, Chevy Chase, and it was just a disaster. We did not get along. And I had to leave the movie, and I had to call John and say, I can't work with Chevy. And it was hard to do because this was probably, in my head, my last shot at directing. But I had to walk away. I knew I would make a terrible film, and I didn't want to do that. 2 weeks later, John sent me the script to Home Alone. I just really thought I can put my imprint on the film, but I would tell the entire story from Kevin's point of view.
I can't seem to find my toothbrush, so I'll pick one up when I go out today. Other than that, I'm in good shape.
I had seen Macaulay and Uncle Buck. John Hughes, being an amazing producer, he said to me, look, Chris, it's your movie. I'm telling you Macaulay's good, but go on a search and see if you can find somebody that you like as much or somebody better. So I did that. I felt that I had a responsibility to do that. I looked at 300, 400 kids, and I came back and met with Macaulay and realized no one in the world is like this kid. I think the film speaks for itself. He has this very unique, approachable quality as an actor.
This is it. Don't get scared now.
And I think kids relate to him for whatever reason. He's not a kid from the Disney Channel. He's a very relatable kid.
Hello.
The booby trap sequences for Home Alone was inspired by old Warner Brothers cartoons.
Close enough?
I was obsessed with those cartoons, and I felt that, ironically, the most violent things that happen in Warner Brothers cartoons happen to be the funniest. We applied that to the booby traps in Home Alone, whether it was stepping on a nail or having an iron thrown down a laundry chute. Something that could potentially kill you that you walk away from is funny. And Buster Keaton showed us that through years. I just applied that mentality to designing the booby traps. And at the time, wire work was not being done in terms of stunts, so they were funny seconds after they were completed. In other words, when they were done and I called cut, no one was laughing because we thought the stunt performer was killed. So I had to walk up to the stunt performer and ask him if he was okay. Thumbs up, jumps to his feet and says, great. And then we go back and look at the video playback and it's hysterical. But nothing is funny when you think someone's been hurt. Nowadays, all those stunts are done with wire work and they don't have the same feeling. Home Alone 2, Lost in New York.
Excuse me, but this is an emergency.
Yes, sir?
What city is that over there?
That's New York, sir.
Yikes, I did it again.
I mean, deep down, we all knew basically Home Alone 2 was a remake of Home Alone 1. You know, there's no surprise there. So if we're dealing with that particular plot, how do we make it better or funnier? Well, the stunts have to be more extreme. We had to just up the ante in terms of the dangerousness of the stunts, the violence of those particular stunts. And so I feel, yeah, that those particular stunts in Home Alone 2 are funnier and more extreme. And also Home Alone 2 became something else for me because I, at that point, considered myself a New Yorker. I was here for over a decade. I think if you live here for 2 months, you're a New Yorker. But I really wanted to do a love letter to New York. And that was, oddly, Home Alone 2 became my love letter to New York City.
Excuse me, where's the lobby?
Down the hall and to the left.
Thanks.
The title of the Home Alone sequel was called Christmas in the Park. Basically, it was set around Central Park and the Plaza Hotel. So we needed the Plaza Hotel as a character in the film. The only way we could get the Plaza Hotel was the agreement was with Donald Trump, that he would have a cameo in the film, and I knew I could cut it later, which was what I was intending to do. It's a fairly innocuous moment. He asks for directions, it's Donald Trump gives him directions, bam. Over with, shot, got the Plaza Hotel, I'm gonna go back to the editing room and cut it. Well, we preview the movie, and it's one of the biggest laughs in the film. Now, I've always had this sort of mantra when I'm shooting a film that it has to be timeless. You know, that it shouldn't really be, representative of the time it's shot. It should feel like some sense of timelessness. Donald Trump goes against all of that at that time because he was a character in New York culture at that particular time. Nevertheless, the studio and I agreed that it should be in the film because it was funny and people enjoyed it. So we kept it in the movie. That's how it ended up there. It's there. So make of it what you will. Mrs. Doubtfire.
Hello, Mrs. Hillard, I presume?
Yes, I'm Miranda Hillard.
Euphigenia Doubtfire.
Yes. Won't you please come in?
With Robin, it was agreed that we would do 3 scripted takes, and then we would, in his words, play. It was unlike anything I'd done except working with Macaulay Culkin, because you could say to a kid, try this, do this, make that, With Robin, I could say, why don't you try this or do this in the improv? So it was very freeing, and it was very freeing for him. Yet at the same time, Robin was possessed by something I've never seen before or since, which is there was this spirituality about him. When I would say action, suddenly he became the character of whether it was Mrs. Doubtfire or Daniel Hillard, and he would go off script. And when I yelled cut, he would say to the script supervisor, what did I say? He wouldn't remember because he was so lost and overtaken with this incredible performance. By the way, we shot 15 to 22 takes. All of them were special. That was the difficulty in editing the film, but that's another story. The fact that he would do something different in every take made me shoot some of those scenes as if I were shooting a documentary, which meant 3 cameras. So I would have a camera on Sally Field or Pierce Brosnan because none of us knew what was going to happen. Even if I made suggestions to Robin, you never knew what he was going to do. And I had to get their reactions at that moment because the second take would never be the same. Or, sorry, the 7th or 8th take would never be the same. It was a lot of research and development. For instance, the Mrs. Doubtfire body, the costume, how would that best feel real? Well, it was all made out of birdseed, so it would have some sort of flow, if for lack of a better word. The look of the makeup had to appear not too severe, so that if you saw it in public, the Mrs. Doubtfire character would be believable, which enabled Robin, as we were shooting, to go out onto the streets of San Francisco, go into any store he wanted to, and no one had any idea it was Robin. It's kind of freeing for him. I don't know if I could say he worked on the character doing that, but I remember shooting in North Beach, and Robin was gone, and we would be like, where is he? He's in that grocery store. He was Mrs. Doubtfire walking through the streets of San Francisco. So we got the process of testing the makeup to a point where it would work in real life. Once it worked in real life, we knew we could actually shoot it.
Can I give you a hand?
Oh, no, dear, I don't need a hand. I need a face.
We would do rehearsals in the morning, and Robin went through hours and hours of makeup. And when we get to the set and start rehearsals, Robin was half in and half out of makeup. So we would be blocking that. Robin would come to set with the Mrs. Doubtfire face. That was it. His face was intact. He'd be wearing a surf shirt with his hairy arms and his shorts. And he'd say, hey, boss, what do you want to do? But he's wearing the mask. So it was like directing a horror film at the beginning of the day. And we'd block the scene. And really on those days, when he finally came to set as Mrs. Doubtfire, I treated him as a completely different person. I treated him as if he were a 75-year-old woman. And I'd help him onto the set. I mean, it psychologically messes with your head. You can't even imagine that character comes onto the set and it's her. It's Mrs. Doubtfire. It's not Robin Williams. So for Pierce, who had never seen except a fraction of Robin in the restaurant scene, when the mask is half off, he actually never had an opportunity to meet Robin Williams. He only knew Mrs. Doubtfire. Gremlins.
What is it?
No.
It's your new pet.
Ironically, we are sitting 1 block away from the loft I lived in New York City. I mean, a stone's throw, back in 1981 maybe, and I was living in a loft that was about $108 a month. We had mice, and I would sleep with my arm draped over the bed, and mice would sort of scurry by in the middle of the night and wake me up. And it was very creepy, and I thought there's nothing more frightening or creepy than these tiny creatures. So I started thinking about a horror film. I always wanted to write a horror film, so I started thinking about a horror film based on tiny monsters, and I remembered my father, who was a World War II veteran, who would discuss Gremlins going into his, if it was an airplane, or that was the reason that there was mechanical failure in World War II, because of Gremlins. So that gave me the title, and then I wrote the script on spec, thinking no one would ever read it. My agent sent Gremlins out to about 50 to 60 producers and studios at the time. Everyone passed. It was very bloody. It was too violent. We didn't hear much else except it was too violent. So no one read the script, and I kind of thought it was over. And suddenly I got a call in my loft, and my roommate answered and said, "It's Steven Spielberg on the phone." I said, "Yeah, right." I didn't know Steven Spielberg was getting the script. So I thought it was one of my friends playing a joke, and I got on the phone, and I recognized the voice, and it really was Spielberg. It turns out that the script was sitting on top of, this is luck, it's pure luck, on top of his assistant's desk, on a pile of scripts. It said Gremlins. He liked the title. It was Friday night. He picked it up and decided he was going to read it over the weekend. He read it and fell in love with it. So it was very fortuitous, and it was sort of the big, people talk about the big break for your career. That was the big break for me.
Cute.
Steven was adamant about one particular thing in Gremlins, which is my concept was that all of the Mogwai, which are the cute little gremlins, became gremlins. But Steven felt that Gizmo, the head Mogwai, should remain intact throughout the film. He felt that the audience needed a relatable character, and that he felt that Gizmo needed to be that character. And he was 100% right. It was just a brilliant idea, because it turned Gremlins from a standard horror film into something much more special, something much more unique, and something much deeper. In terms of toning things down, I think he only, Steven and probably Warner Brothers only toned down what were sort of my excesses as a writer. In other words, when you're cutting off a character's head and it rolls down the stairs, people have a tendency to think of that as one type of horror film. We were trying to do some sort of elevated horror film. I didn't know what at the time, but to Steven's credit and Warner Brothers' credit, they pushed it as far as we possibly could. And because of Gremlins, the PG-13 rating. Gremlins was rated PG, as was Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom. And Steven, as a result of those films, and those films terrorizing a lot of younger children, Steven went to the board and said, we need to have a PG-13 rating, which I think is a good thing, The Goonies.
Slick shoes! Slick shoes? Are you crazy? Data!
Gremlins actually paved the way, because at that time I moved out of New York for like 8 months, maybe a little longer, and I went to meet Steven, and then Steven offered me an office at Amblin when Amblin was just beginning. So at Amblin at that time, it was a magical time. Just about 8 of us there. Kathy Kennedy, Frank Marshall, John Williams had an office, Robert Zemeckis had an office, and I had an office 3 doors down from Steven. So it was like working at a newspaper. I'd run to his office, we'd discuss things, and in those meetings, that's where Steven started to come up with the idea and the storyline for Goonies. And we'd start to talk about it. We'd look at his old hardcover EC comics, and there was a comic I remember called something The Goon Children.
Look, if we keep going, someone's really gonna get hurt. Maybe dead. Besides, we gotta get to the police.
Maybe Chunk already got to the police.
Maybe Chunk is dead.
Don't say that. Never say that. Goonies never say die.
And the first draft of Goonies, ironically, which I have in my New York apartment, says The Goon Children. For some reason, we called it that, and then it changed to Goonies. But Steven started to talk about this story. I was taking copious notes, and then we decided to start writing it. So I was just 3 doors down. I'd write 3 or 4 pages, take them to Steven's office. He would make some corrections, and I would go back. And that's how the script came to be. And as a result of that, it was sort of my graduate school of filmmaking. I learned a lot about how to structure a film, I became a much better writer, and it sort of paved my way in terms of becoming a director by working with Steven on the Goonies script. When Goonies was released, it was a moderate success and was fine, and suddenly it came out on VHS. And that's when it became this monster hit. Kids were watching it over and over and over, exchanging copies. So Goonies became this touchstone for a lot of kids. And I realized it's a much more complex movie than even I gave it credit for. There's something about Goonies that is so relatable to kids between the ages of like 9 and 14. And it's managed to stay with those kids forever. I do think it's a sense of wish fulfillment. These kids, they not only save their town in the process, but it's this wish fulfillment of having an adventure of their own. And I think that's why it connects with so many kids. Rent.
Make yourself comfortable, Mark. Who wants to begin? Well,
When I first saw Rent, I saw it twice the same week. I had never been moved that emotionally by a piece of theater, a musical theater. I was always a fan of musical theater, but that one knocked me out. And I realized after seeing it, boy, I would someday love to make a film out of this. So after Harry Potter, I was given the opportunity to be able to direct the adaptation. Almost as intimidating as doing Harry Potter. There was a lot of pressure to not use the original cast of Rent and go with people like Justin Timberlake and Christina Aguilera at the time. But Rent was an emotional experience because this is the first time in history, probably the only time in history, where you're about to go into your opening night and the creator of the musical passes away. And you're taking that tragedy into this performance. No actor in history has had to deal with that. No group of actors. So they brought that to the stage every night. And that's something that's indefinable. You can't capture that on film with other actors, with other musical stars. So I was adamant about using as much of the original cast as I could. And that, did not go well with some people. Some people thought they were too old for the roles. Some people felt the movie would have been more commercial with a more contemporary musical cast. But I felt that I wanted to capture what I saw on the stage on film. Adventures in Babysitting.
Get off at the next stop.
I had a film teacher, Haig Manoogian, who taught at NYU. He taught Martin Scorsese and De Palma, and Haig passed away my senior year and was really instrumental in helping me form my career. And he would always say to me, the best way to become a director is to become a writer. So that's really why I put so much effort into writing things like Gremlins and Goonies and Young Sherlock Holmes, is because I knew, Haig said to me, if films that you write are successful enough, they'll give you the opportunity to direct. So that's what I was that was my goal. So by the time Adventures in Babysitting came along, there were a lot of people who weren't willing to support me as a director. People who were very close to me just did not go there. Deborah Hill and Linda Obst were two producers who believed in me. They never should have taken a shot on me. I had one student film that was okay. But they said, we believe in you as a director for this film, Adventures in Babysitting. And I read the film and I realized I could sort of put my own stamp on it because it felt grittier than what you would expect from a title like Adventures in Babysitting. We ended up shooting an R-rated version of Adventures in Babysitting, and it was basically because of language. But at the very same time, I was able, and I hired the cinematographer from 48 Hours. So you could tell what my influences were.
Babysitting blues, baby, baby, babysitting blues.
I always think any movie will be better with a musical number. I mean, even The Godfather has a musical number. It's The Wedding, but it's a musical number. I'm obsessed with music, and I'm obsessed with doing musical numbers. And the Babysitting Blues came out of this bizarre idea I had about these kids getting these terribly unmusical kids getting stuck on a blues bar stage. It really did not fit into this movie. I had to construct the entire movie around that sequence. It was total joy shooting that sequence because we shot it very late in the film. We spent 3 days shooting it. I shot it like a concert documentary, and it really is the highlight of the film. And one of the interesting things about it is the two editors who worked on Adventures in Babysitting were overwhelmed with the amount of footage of the babysitting blues. We shot hundreds of thousands of feet. And so we had to bring in a special editor to cut the babysitting blues. And that editor, his name was Raja Gosnell, and he did such a phenomenal job that I kept him on as my editor through Home Alone and Mrs. Doubtfire, and he's now had a directing career of his own. And for me, it was the highlight of that film. I look back on that sequence and sort of, if I'm doing a musical number, I go back to that sequence and sort of not study how I did it, but take inspiration from how I did it. Percy Jackson and the Olympians, The Lightning Thief. Percy Jackson was an interesting adaptation because, I mean, to be quite honest, it taught me a lesson. I liked the books. I didn't love the books. And I put myself in a situation where I, for the first time, probably only time in my career, where I was approaching a project not as a full-fledged, adoring fan. So when I got into Harry Potter, I was a fan. I was a fanboy, first and foremost. When I got into years down the road, Thursday Murder Club, obsessive fan. When I got into Percy Jackson, I like the books. They're fine, but I think I can make them better. Mistake. Huge mistake. I realized that by doing certain things that I didn't realize it at the time, but after the movie came out, I realized I was alienating a good part of the audience who loved these books. And I felt badly about that because I changed certain elements of the books because I thought it would be more interesting to me as a filmmaker, quite honestly. I don't disagree with my choices, by the way. I like Logan Lerman's version. What can I say? I think Logan Lerman is one of the great actors, and his time has yet to come in a weird way. I think he's going to do a lot of amazing work over the next decade. But I saw Logan in 3:10 to Yuma, and I thought, oh my God, this kid is an amazing actor. I have to work with him. So to be honest, I based all of Percy Jackson. I changed everything so I could put Logan in the movie. And I think he's great in the movie. And I think he's a great Percy Jackson. So there you go. The Thursday Murder Club.
Dear God.
'Tis a lot of blood.
Would you care to join us to discuss things further?
Who is us?
I'm sorry, how rude of me. We're the Thursday Murder Club.
So when I first read Thursday Murder Club, two things occurred to me. One is I loved what Richard Osman did with the characters. These are four very funny,
Oh my God.
edgy British characters, complex. The murder mystery was fine. It wasn't about making a murder mystery. For me, most murder mysteries that we've seen, even the great ones, are very cold and procedural. But I love the idea that these are real people, and real people going through very complex emotions. The other thing that attracted me to the material was the opportunity to go back to the UK and my love of Britain and my love of all things British and be able to work with the caliber of actors I was able to work on in Harry Potter. So in Harry Potter, I had Maggie Smith and Richard Harris and Alan Rickman, and now I had the opportunity to work with Helen Mirren and Sir Ben Kingsley and Pierce Brosnan and Celia Imrie, people that are so professional and have done so much more work than so many other actors. And by that, I mean they do theater, television, and film. In the year 2000, that was a rarity. Now, a lot more film actors are doing television. Not as many doing theater, maybe Clooney, a couple other movie stars, but that you don't really, those areas don't cross over. In Britain, they do, which makes everybody in the UK better actors. So as a director, you get the opportunity, it doesn't make you lazy, but you get the opportunity to sort of step back and let them do their work. You don't interfere too much because as opposed to doing take after take with a kid who's never been in front of a camera before, you're dealing with the utmost professionals. And they give you 3 takes, each one varied, each one interesting on its own right. It just makes my work as a director much more enjoyable because I'm sitting back as a fan, again, watching all of these great actors performing together. There's nothing better as a director.
Joyce, what are you doing? Bringing a coffee machine? This isn't a village fete. This is serious business.
Yes, of course, but good coffee means we can protest longer.
Part of the reason for doing the film was this concept of, I saw it with my grandparents, my own parents, that there's a sense of invisibility when you reach a certain age. You just sort of blend into the background. And I felt that it was important to show the vitality of someone who's getting older and how they can be sort of more vital and more important to society than someone 40 years younger. I want these films to last. I want to have some sort of lasting quality with my films. None of us are naive enough to think that every film we make is going to change people's lives, but you hope that the film has, again, some lasting power, some longevity. You know, I probably got about 20, 25 years left. So I plan on doing some more things. And so I don't tend to dwell on the past. If you dwell on the past, I feel that you really can fuck up the future. For lack of a better word. If you think about the past too much, you're dead in the water.